Amelia Earhart, Legacy, Mystery, and the Search for Answers. Ladies and gentlemen, today I invite you to step back in time and follow the extraordinary journey of a woman who defied expectations, challenged gravity, and vanished into one of the greatest mysteries in modern history, Amelia Earhart. The world remembers her as a pilot, an aviation icon, but her story is much bigger. It is about courage, breaking barriers, fighting stereotypes, and the unquenchable hunger to explore. Amelia Earhart became a symbol of possibility long before she disappeared. She proved that bravery is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let fear dictate our destiny. To understand her legacy, we have to begin where everything started. Amelia Mary Earhart was born on July 24, 1897, in Atchison, Kansas. The world she was born into had strict limits for girls. Boys could climb trees, build things, get dirty, imagine adventure. Girls were expected to be reserved, proper, delicate. But from an early age, Amelia was different. She climbed trees, hunted rats with a rifle, collected insects, and built homemade roller coasters using scrap wood from her grandparents' barn. She once sped down the rails in her improvised coaster, flew off the ramp, crashed, and got up laughing. She declared, "It was just like flying." In a way, that childhood roller coaster was her first taste of aviation. Amelia was curious about everything. She devoured books, kept a scrapbook of newspaper articles about women who had accomplished things society told them they couldn't do. Female lawyers, surgeons, engineers, explorers. While society taught young girls to blend in, Amelia learned to stand out. Her family life, however, was unstable. Her father struggled with alcoholism, and the family moved frequently. Amelia and her younger sister grew accustomed to change. She learned early that life didn't offer guarantees. You had to chase what mattered. Amelia saw her first airplane at a state fair when she was 10 years old. Ironically, she wasn't impressed. The plane was old and rusty, sitting in a field like a forgotten carnival ride. She later wrote, "It was a thing of rusty wire and wood, and looked not at all interesting." Aviation was not yet part of her destiny. After high school, she worked as a nurse during World War I, caring for wounded soldiers. Seeing young men return from war with broken bodies and shattered futures changed her perspective forever. She realized life could end without warning. After the war, she enrolled in pre-med studies, demonstrating once again that she did not accept society's limitations on women. But fate had other plans. Everything changed in 1920. While visiting an airfield in Long Beach, California, Amelia paid $1 for a 10-minute flight with veteran pilot Frank Hawks. The moment the plane lifted off the ground, she felt something ignite inside her. Later, she said, "As soon as I left the ground, I knew I had to fly." That flight changed her life. She became consumed with aviation. She worked multiple jobs: truck driver, stenographer, photographer, to pay for lessons. Her flight instructor was Netta Snook, one of the few female pilots in the world. Netta later said Amelia was not naturally gifted, but she had fierce determination and discipline. Amelia took her lessons seriously. She cut her hair short to look like a pilot, wore leather jackets, and slept in her flying clothes to break them in. Within 6 months, she purchased her first plane, a yellow Kinner Airster, which she affectionately named the Canary. In 1922, she set her first record, the highest altitude achieved by a woman pilot, 14,000 feet. She was only 25. Amelia's rise to fame was not accidental. In 1928, promoter George Palmer Putnam, whom she would later marry, invited her to join a transatlantic flight, not as a pilot, but as a passenger. The media called her Queen of the Air and compared her to Charles Lindbergh, who had completed the first solo transatlantic flight the year before. Newspapers labeled her Lady Lindy. Crowds followed her everywhere she went. But Amelia felt undeserving. Privately, she wrote, I was just baggage, like a sack of potatoes. She wanted to earn the title of aviator, not be granted it. She got her chance 4 years later. On May 20th, 1932, Amelia Earhart took off from Newfoundland in her single-engine Lockheed Vega, determined to become the first woman to complete a solo transatlantic flight. The journey was brutal. She fought freezing winds, a malfunctioning fuel gauge, and ice forming on her wings. At one point, her plane dropped several thousand feet in seconds. She nearly lost control, but she refused to quit. After nearly 15 hours, she landed in a farmer's field in Northern Ireland. Stunned, the farmer walked toward her and asked, "Have you flown far?" Amelia replied, "From America." In that moment, history changed. Amelia became a global sensation. She received the Distinguished Flying Cross, the first woman to do so. The world finally recognized her as a true pilot, not a symbolic passenger. But for Amelia, aviation was never about fame. She used her platform to advocate for women's rights. She wrote books, gave speeches, encouraged girls to pursue careers outside traditional expectations. She once said, "Women must try things as men have tried them. When they fail, their failure must be a challenge to others." She taught at Purdue University, advising female students and helping women pursue careers in aviation, engineering, and science. She rejected society's expectations of marriage and domestic life. Even when she married George Putnam, she wrote him a letter before the ceremony, stating, "I shall not hold you to any medieval code of faithfulness, nor shall I consider myself bound to you similarly." She believed in partnership, not possession. She believed a woman's life should be defined by her aspirations, not by her marital status. By 1937, Amelia felt she had one last great challenge ahead of her: to fly around the world. It would be the longest flight ever attempted. Her aircraft was a Lockheed Electra 10E, a sleek silver twin-engine plane. She called it her flying laboratory. Her navigator was Fred Noonan, a brilliant but troubled man known for celestial navigation. Fred had experience navigating in remote parts of the world and was one of the few people capable of guiding a plane across the vast Pacific, long before GPS or modern radio navigation systems. Their flight plan was ambitious, nearly 29,000 miles along the equator. The first attempt ended in disaster when the plane crashed during takeoff in Hawaii. Amelia refused to quit. The Electra was repaired, and on June 1st, 1937, the second attempt began. They flew from Miami down to South America. From there, across the South Atlantic to Africa, then across the desert to India, and southeast to Australia. The public followed their progress with fascination. Every radio transmission, every telegram became headline news. By July 2nd, they reached Lae, New Guinea. They had completed 22,000 miles. Only the Pacific remained. Their next target was Howland Island, a tiny strip of land, barely visible even under perfect conditions. The U.S. Coast Guard positioned a ship, the Itasca, near the island to provide navigation support. Radio communication was difficult. Frequencies did not match. Weather conditions were unpredictable. Earhart and Noonan were exhausted. At 7:42 a.m., Amelia transmitted, "We must be on you, but cannot see you." Minutes later, "We are running north and south." Those were her last words. The world expected her to land. She never did. Earhart and Noonan vanished somewhere over the Pacific Ocean. Their disappearance sparked the largest search operation in U.S. history at that time. Battleships, aircraft carriers, and airplanes scanned millions of square kilometers. The U.S. Navy spent $4 million, a staggering amount for 1937. Nothing was found. Amelia Earhart was legally declared dead in 1939. But the world did not accept the official answer, because the truth was, and still is, unknown. Her disappearance became fertile ground for theories, speculation, and obsession. Researchers, historians, divers, forensic scientists, treasure hunters, and conspiracy theorists have dedicated their lives to searching for answers. The most widely accepted explanation is simple. Amelia ran out of fuel, missed the island, and crashed into the Pacific. The ocean is vast. The aircraft may lie several kilometers underwater, beyond reach. Yet, there are details that make this mystery unusual. Amelia was an experienced pilot. Fred Noonan was one of the best navigators of his time. How could they both miss an island the size of Howland? How could no debris ever surface? Why did people report radio signals coming from the Pacific in the days following her disappearance? For those reasons, multiple alternative theories emerged. One of the most compelling is the Nikumaroro theory. According to this hypothesis, Amelia and Fred survived the landing, but on the wrong island. Nikumaroro, formerly Gardner Island, is about 350 miles south of Howland. Several distress radio messages were picked up shortly after Earhart disappeared, messages believed to be from her plane. If the Electra landed on flat coral, the radio could have functioned temporarily. In 1940, British colonial officers discovered skeletal remains, the sole of a woman's shoe, and a sextant box matching the type Fred Noonan used. At the time, a doctor examined the bones and claimed they belonged to a man. Decades later, the bones were reanalyzed using modern forensic techniques based on measurements recorded before the bones disappeared. The new analysis concluded the bones were consistent with a woman of Earhart's size and ethnicity, more than 99% likely. Although this does not prove the remains belonged to Amelia, it keeps the theory alive. The next theory is even more controversial, that Amelia Earhart was captured by the Japanese. Supporters believe she crashed near the Marshall Islands, territory controlled by Japan. Multiple islanders claim to have seen a white woman pilot and a tall American man being taken prisoner. Some U.S. Marines who later served on Saipan claimed they found records or heard military conversations suggesting an American pilot was held captive. And then there is the infamous photograph. A picture allegedly showing Amelia and Fred on a dock surrounded by Japanese soldiers. The photograph was later challenged, with some arguing it may have been taken years earlier. Yet supporters remain convinced. They believe the U.S. government stayed silent to avoid political conflict with Japan before World War II. Another popular theory claims Earhart was working as a spy for the U.S. government. According to this idea, her round-the-world flight was simply a cover for photographing Japanese military installations. Supporters point to the fact that the U.S. government assisted in financing some of the navigation equipment. However, the National Archives have consistently denied the existence of classified records supporting this claim. And then there are more imaginative theories. That Earhart assumed a new identity and returned to the U.S. to live a private life. That she was captured by indigenous islanders. That she lived anonymously and died years later in New Jersey. Theories grow when evidence is missing, and in this case, evidence is missing. So, what does the United States government say today? The official position remains unchanged. Amelia Earhart ran out of fuel and crashed into the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. government does not endorse the Japanese capture theory or the spy mission theory. They have repeatedly stated that no classified documents exist involving those scenarios. However, the government allows private organizations to research, explore, and search the seafloor. In recent years, high-tech teams using sonar and underwater drones have begun scanning previously unreachable depths. In early 2024, a team revealed sonar images of a plane-shaped object resting deep on the seabed, near the likely crash area. Is it Amelia's plane? We don't yet know, but the world is closer than ever to answers. Even if we discover exactly what happened to her and Fred Noonan, Amelia Earhart's greatest legacy will never be her disappearance. Her greatest legacy is how she lived. She represented courage during a time when courage was not encouraged in women. She showed that ambition was not unattractive. She proved that dreams do not have a gender. She once said, "Never do things others can do and will do, if there are things others cannot do or will not do." To young girls who were taught to be quiet, Amelia Earhart shouted possibility. To women told they could only observe history, Amelia Earhart became history. She did not fly to prove that women could do what men did. She flew to prove that women could do whatever they dreamed of. Today, more than 87% of commercial airline pilots are men. Female pilots still remain a minority. Yet, every woman who flies today, every astronaut, every military pilot, every female engineer who designs aircraft, carries Amelia's influence. Her disappearance matters. Her mystery fascinates us, but her life is what inspires us. Amelia Earhart's story reminds us of something powerful. Some people are not meant to stay on the ground. Some people are meant to fly. She once wrote, "Adventure is worthwhile in itself. Perhaps that is the final lesson. Life is not measured by how safely we land, but by how boldly we fly." Thank you.